Oh no! It's the vegans! Hey, welcome to Lead Loud. My name is Richard Mulholland. I'm the founder of Presentation Powerhouse Missing Link. And guess what? The vegans are here. But don't go away just yet because, as you know, we have a series on underrated TED Talks. And it came from the fact that people were always asking me, hey man, what is the, what TED Talks can I watch? And the reason they asked me that is because I'm a professional speaker and the founder of Presentation Powerhouse Missing Link. And so every other week we try to find a talk for you that is so underrated, that like criminally underrated. Now, the talk I'm about to show you is probably the very first one I wanted to share in this series, but I kind of wanted to win you over first before we got into the subject matter. And yes, it's a dude who's a vegan. He's this guy. His name is Ed Winters, better known as Earthling Ed, and this talk is a masterclass in brilliant presentation, in fantastic storytelling, and in a great handling of a narrative journey. And so we're going to go through this and we're going to break it down in the same framework that we use when we break down great TED Talks. Anytime you watch a talk, you need to watch it critically. You shouldn't be a passive observer, you should be an active participant. And the way that you do that is you answer certain questions throughout the talk. Now, I've made a full video on what those questions are, so you should certainly go across and check that out now. I've included the link somewhere up there. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn or Facebook, pop over to the YouTube channel, find the link there, and Bob's your uncle. The framework goes through, and the questions we're going to ask ourselves today are three. We're going to ask ourselves, how did the speaker win us over? We're then going to ask ourselves, what would we like to steal from them? What narrative tools or presentation tips did they use that we would like to use in the next presentation that we give? And then finally, we're going to ask ourselves, probably the most important question you should ask anytime you watch any talk if you want to improve. And that is this: what advice would I give them if they'd asked for it? If they'd said to me, please watch this talk and give me your critical feedback, what feedback would I give? So that's what we're going to do with Ed's talk right now. Let's start with, how did he win me over? The way he won me over, there's kind of two parts to this. The first part for me, is that I had this preconceived idea of what I would expect from a vegan doing a talk like this. I expected it to be big and preachy and attacky, and there was none of that. In fact, he took a lot of this on himself.
Eating meat's the circle of life. And after all, other animals eat other animals, so why can't I? These are a selection of the things that I used to say when someone said the word vegan to me. But I also used to say that vegans were crazy and that no one should ever go vegan. But now I am vegan. And so how on earth did that happen?
The second thing that was so great is he could have gone the easy route. He could have showed us all these sensational images, the images that people don't really want to see, those inconvenient images. Did he do that? Not at all. In fact, he took the harder route of telling a highly visual or potentially highly visual story using only a theater of the mind. And I thought that was absolutely genius.
And so to imply that it's morally justifiable to use animals because it's a personal choice would mean that every action that we as humans can make must also be morally justifiable because every action is a personal choice. And so, is it morally justifiable to randomly assault a stranger on the street? Is it morally justifiable to go to a shelter, rescue a dog, bring them home, and then abuse them yourself? No, of course it's not. Because those choices have a victim, someone who suffers negatively because of the personal choice that we have made.
When we spoke about this at our business and we broke it down as a team, and everybody resonated with the fact that he didn't come across, they were quite nervous when they were watching it, but he made them at ease. And I thought, that was a fantastic. When people have an expectation of you, when you move away from what that expectation is, you win people over to your side. So that was great. Now, what would I steal? Well, there's a couple of things that I want to steal from this talk. The first is actually, and it's something we speak about a lot, when we break down talks, I always say to the team at Missing Link, what's important? You have to make sure that the presentation, cashes the check that it writes at the beginning. And where it writes that check is when, the title of the talk. And this one did exactly what it said it would do, right? The talk is entitled, Every Argument Against Veganism. And I thought it was a perfect name for the talk because that's exactly what he did. He took you down through all the arguments that you would expect to find.
And let's take this argument and this line of thinking and apply it to the culture and tradition excuse as well. Is it justifiable to kill dogs during the Yulin Dog Meat Festival because the festival is a cultural event? Is it justifiable to slaughter dolphins in Japan or pilot whales in the Faroe Islands because those events are traditional?
By having that title, you knew exactly what you were getting. So often, professional speakers or presenters, when they don't tell you properly what you're going to get. This one was very, very clear, and I just thought it was great, and it's a lesson that I should certainly take. If you look up some of the titles of some of my TED Talks that I've done, you can see that they're not so fantastic. The next thing that I want to steal from him is his use of rhetorical questions. Now, I don't know if you know what that is. That is a rhetorical question mark. I am, to use the lingo of the cool kids, yesterday, years old when I found out that was a rhetorical question mark. Now, the truth is, I'm not sure if it's strictly a rhetorical question, but he's certainly using great tools of rhetoric to ask questions. And in fact, Ed talked a lot about that when you are debating with anybody on any topic, when they give you they ask questions of themselves, a great tool to go back is to try and find other questions you can ask back. So you're engaging with what they say and asking other questions to them. Now, what I thought was so brilliant of what he did here is that he asked those questions of himself. However, when he asks those questions of himself, you're sitting there at home and you're asking yourself those questions too. So you're saying, why did I do that? Let me give you an example. Check this out.
Why would we ever base our morality on the actions of a primitive society when modern day notions of right and wrong didn't exist, and in the absence of choice, consuming animals was a necessity for their survival? Let's take that argument, because it's also pertinent when we look at the animals eat other animals excuse as well. Just because a lion kills and eats a gazelle doesn't mean we're justified to go to a supermarket and buy a steak. Lions are obligate carnivores, which means they need to eat meat to survive. As we've already established, we don't. And like before, why would we ever base our morality on the actions of wild animals who are consistently documented as doing things that we would never deem acceptable within our own country, or indeed within our own society in general?
You see what he did there? He asked himself a question, and then he started answering the question, and then you're kind of like, okay. And it feels like you asked and answered the question the same way yourself. And it's only really as he gets to the very, very end that he asks you a direct question about taste versus life, like this one here.
What has higher value, taste or life? Do we require more than sensory pleasure alone to morally justify an action? Remember that a meal to us lasts only a matter of minutes, but that meal has cost an animal their entire life. We take their life for a moment that is fleeting.
He asked those questions, got you to ask those questions, and it was a thing of beauty because it rolled over along the way and just became a great narrative journey. Did it work though? Because it's quite a big topic. Wow. Have I told you lately or today that I am a vegan? It worked for me. Literally. Now, backstory. My son and my wife had been vegan for 2 years. I watched this video because it said every argument against veganism. I said, I'll have one of those. I'm going to go and debate my family. I watched that video. I finished the video. I got to the very end. Literally, this is how it went down. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was like, closed my laptop, walked in, I chatted to my wife and said, all right, I'm going vegetarian. I'm never eating meat again. And I haven't. And that was in 2019. It was crazy how much it affected me. Now, granted, I've been thinking about this space a lot, but I decided to go vegetarian. And that leads me into my final point. If Ed Winters had approached me and said, hey, Rich, could you give me any critical feedback? Anything that you think that I could perhaps improve in my story? You be owning a presentation company. What would it be? Now, I think Ed is a phenomenal speaker. I really do think this is a masterclass in storytelling. However, there was one, I think, critical misstep that perhaps he made. I'd love to chat to him one day about it to see how he feels about it. And that is this. Look, you need to understand when you're doing a presentation, right? There are steps to a presentation. We have a action framework, a missing link. There are 4 steps to every presentation. You want to give them a reason to care. You want to give them a reason to believe. Then you want to tell them what they need to know. And finally, you want to tell them what they need to do. We've created a great video series on how to build a presentation using this action framework. You can check out up here or down there. But it's that final bit. Tell them what they need to do, where he lost us. When we were breaking down in the office, our team was like, well, that was too big. And in fact, here's the thing that I think Ed understands, but didn't get on this one. When you're talking about what you want to achieve, it's kind of like understand that your objective that you're trying to deliver in a presentation looks something like a stream, and you want to get your people across the stream. However, your job of the presentation isn't to get them to your final victory condition here. The job of your presentation is something different. You just want them to take the very, very first step. Now, Ed shut that first step down, where Ed turns around and says, is vegetarianism enough? Check this out.
So then we say, but do we have to be vegan? I mean, vegetarian, I get it. But animals don't die in the production of dairy and eggs, so surely being vegetarian is enough. Simply put, no, it's not.
I was vegetarian for a couple of months. I thought I was going to be for 6 months up until my birthday, but I ended up stopping sooner than later. And Ed was vegetarian first as well, also for a few months before he went vegan. And yet he shut this down for you as an option. He didn't allow meat-free Mondays as an option. He didn't allow do Veganuary as an option. And so what he did is he asked people to stand at the end of the stream and to take a big ass jump across with no stepping stones. And I think if it was up to me, I understand where he wants to get people to. He wants to get them to there, but he needs to realize that that's not the job. The job is to change the current victory condition of your talk and to get people to there, right? If we can get people just that far, we win. And I think that comes down to his call to action. Now, his call to action was a question he asked of himself, but I think there are other ways that he could have perhaps handled this thing. You know, when we were chatting about it, one of the ladies on the team, Ruth, she said, you know, she was probably the one that was the least moved by the talk. In fact, she was quite vehemently against it. And she said, you know, even if he just asked me, do I have any more arguments that I would like to think about to share with him? That would have been something, and it would have been something, because then your audience would have been, you know, they would have been thinking like, let me try and argue. And then they're trying to argue, and then they're researching to see, is this a good enough argument? And then they're kind of asking and answering themselves. But there was none of that. He made it too big. Now, I understand this is a TED Talk, so you couldn't have done a sales pitch, but like, you know, there are ways how to vegan. The biggest thing is, for a lot of people, isn't why to vegan right now, it's how to vegan. This book, by the way, is absolutely hilarious and brilliant. Buy it for your vegan friends, buy one for yourself. It really is very, very good. But also, you know, it's very, very intimidating. My mate, Jay McNamara, Jay Mac, wrote this fantastic recipe book, which is so badass, and it's cool because Jay is cool AF. So definitely check that out if you are looking at it. But here's an easy step towards doing something. I can buy a recipe book and I can make my family a vegan meal on a Monday. But none of that was in this talk. And I thought that was the one place where maybe he could have made a bigger impact. If he turned around and said, is vegetarianism enough? He could have said, no, I don't think it is. But it's certainly enough for today. It's enough. If that's the journey you want to take on your road to understanding that you can live without cheese and chocolate, then by all means take it. Every single step in the right direction is a step in a better direction. So I challenge each one of you today to take the first step towards, you know, and to lead with that. Maybe Meatless Monday is not quite enough because it gives people the sense that they've done something. Maybe you are asking for something extreme. Veganuary maybe was enough. If people had gone for a full month, then maybe that would have had a big impact. One day, maybe not so much. But we need to make sure that we have great calls to action. And I think that's just what we're missing. So why did I show you this talk? Well, I showed it to you because, one, I think it's a masterclass in great presentation and public speaking, especially on somebody who's presenting without visuals. And I'm a big fan. I firmly believe that a presentation with visuals will always outperform one without, or it's always slightly more powerful. And that doesn't mean visuals throughout the whole thing, but one or two key visuals. I think that could have been the case here as well, but I understand exactly why he chose not to, because it was expected. But the other reason I'm showing you this is, and it's maybe the headspace I'm in right now, but I recently shared a thread, and I said that, you know, you should read something that challenges your worldview. And actually, I thought about this because I was reading Ed's brilliant book, This is Vegan Propaganda, which I highly, highly recommend. The audiobook is actually read by him. We'll include a link down below. I realized that I read a lot of things that enforce my worldviews. So I posted on Twitter and said, hey, can you recommend something that, you know, goes against my worldviews? And you can see here, Drew, thank you. And you can see how Drew is streaming down the comments that we have got some fantastic suggestions. And I think that we should all be trying to challenge our own worldviews with contrarian points of view. And we shouldn't be watching them just to argue with them, but to understand where other people come from. If we do that, we will become smarter and more robust human beings. That's it for me. Please definitely consider going and checking out Ed's talk. Go check out his YouTube channel. Do definitely consider checking out some of the great materials on going vegan, but that was not the reason I got you here. The reason I got you here is to go onto stages and to be a great public speaker. speaker. And of course, if you need any help with that, we do have our Story to Stage program, which we'd love to see you on. Until next time, lead loud.